How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be going over 10 tips and tricks to help you out in New World. But before we get into that, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps out massively. Now, let's get into it. These tips and tricks are aimed at players of all levels of experience in New World, so hopefully even the most veteran of players out there can still get something out of them. A lot of them are just very helpful things that are in-game, but might not have been explained well enough in the tutorial, so lots of players overlook them. With all of that out of the way, let's get to the tips. Number 1. Use your Alt key to look around while running. This was something that I didn't know about until ages after I started playing. Maybe it's something they should add into the tutorial, but I don't know how many times this has saved my life in PvP. If you're being chased and want to check if the enemy is still chasing you, or how far behind they are, but don't want to let them gain ground on you, simply hold the left Alt button while you're running and you can spin your camera around in any direction. It'll take a while to get used to running while looking around, but what I do is throw on auto run and then use this feature, and it's very easy to keep an eye on the enemy that is chasing after me. Play around with it a bit, and in no time it'll be feeling natural, and be a vital part of your gameplay. You can even remap it to another button, maybe even a mouse button if it feels more comfortable to you. Number 2. Make use of the pin recipe feature. It's very helpful. If you head to any crafting station, under a craftable item, there'll be a pin recipe button. If you select it, the ingredients will show up where your quests usually show up, giving you how much of each item you need, and how much you already have. If you change which items you want to use to craft the item before clicking the pin recipe button, the items you want to use will appear instead of the default ones. This will save you so much time having to write down each item, and the items will appear in-game with the blue icon indicating that it's an item you need for the recipe. If you don't see the pinned recipe, simply head on over to your quest journal, and at the bottom you'll see recipes. It should show up there, and you could manually pin it. If you want it to be auto-pinned for the future, make sure to turn on the auto-pin feature. Unfortunately, currently you could only pin one recipe at a time, but it's still a very useful feature in-game that not everyone knows of. Number 3. Quick salvage your gear to save tons of time. It's pretty well shown how to do it, but I still see a lot of people online asking if they have to manually select salvage their item every time or not. Simply hold Ctrl and C, then click on every item you want to salvage, and you can go through all your junk in seconds. Don't worry about accidentally salvaging your legendary items though. They will always ask you before quick salvaging a legendary item. If you didn't know about this one already, you will see yourself saving tons of time in the long run. The first few months of playing I didn't know about this, and used to dread when it was time to delete my useless gear. Number 4. Take advantage of useful setting changes. I see a lot of people leaving everything on default in New World, but if you take a few minutes to head into the settings section to modify a few things, there's some really great quality of life changes you can go over. When it comes to key binding, even if things feel good for you, it's still worth checking out just in case you find an action on there that you didn't know you could do in the game. Also, a very useful one if you're not currently using it, is the swap weapon keybind. Especially if you have any mouse buttons, this is great to have set up so you can quickly and easily change between your weapons. Or, if you're a healer, setting up key bindings to target specific group members can make a massive difference for you when it comes to end-game healing. And finally, if you're not one for voice chatting, you can set up some ping commands to make it easier for you to communicate with your group without having to get the headset out. The game area of the settings also has some really great features. It's worth taking a look through it yourself, since you can find a lot of things that can be disabled that might have been annoying throughout your playthrough. My favorite features include the ability to add an additional ability cooldown counter in the middle of my screen, so I don't have to keep looking at the bottom right of my screen when I'm in combat to know when I can use my ability again. And the camera sensitivity changer, so I can aim my spells at a much quicker rate. The video section is also very important, although overlooked very often. Most people just go in there to max out their graphics settings, but there's also some great options, like the field of view slider, which can allow you to zoom out even further, allowing you to see much more around you, and can be super helpful in combat. Also, the show FPS button at the bottom can be really helpful for players interested in seeing how the game is performing for them. The rest is pretty self-explanatory, but still, taking a look through them could really optimize your in-game experience. Audio can help if you need to tweak any of your in-game noises. Social can help make text and voice chat easier for you, including the option to increase font size if it's hard for you to read the text. And accessibility can help you out if you have any disabilities that make the game harder for you to play. The About section is just disclosures and terms of use documents, but it can be helpful if you need to find out which version of the game is currently running for you. Number 5. Get used to chat commands. Once you get the hang of using chat commands, you can find yourself saving tons of time, and there's also some neat little features in there. For starters, you can use the slash commands with the first letter of any chat channel to quickly turn to that channel without having to do all the additional clicks. It doesn't work for every channel, but it does for the most important ones. There's also one that's a bit more of a fun feature, as it doesn't have much impact on anything, but if you typed in the chat /played, you'll be told how many hours you've played on that character. Not the most helpful feature, but could be a cool feature to try out and compare your times with the rest of your company members. Do note though, when using this command, it doesn't work in every chat channel. You can also use the /chat commands to quickly do emotes. Simply head to the emotes page by hitting P on your keyboard, and it'll tell you the / commands under every emote. You can use those commands in the chat box to save tons of time looking for emotes in the emote page. It's perfect for when you make a great play in PvP and want your opponent to see your emote before he respawns. If you want to really maximize speed, you can have the /emote key already said before in the chat box, and then when you hit enter and get to the chat box, you can use the up and down keys to cycle through previous messages you sent. This is also extremely helpful when you're advertising something in recruitment or trade chat. Number 6. Sort your inventory by what works best for you. Another neglected feature is the sort by buttons in the inventory. At the top right, when you open your inventory beside the search bar, there are some sort by buttons. You can choose to sort by most recent, by weight, by gear score, or by item tier. Each of these is very useful in different situations, so play around with it and find out which way works best for you. It definitely makes inventory more manageable. Number 7. Stick to roads and paths. You'll run faster. You run 15% faster on roads and paths, so if you're on a long run and there's a path near you, try to stay on it as long as possible. It'll save you loads of time. You can see the speed buff above the health bar when it's active, but keep in mind, using abilities or dodging will disable it for a few seconds. So keep that in mind. Certain skills like Burnout and Fleisch may gain you a few seconds on the long journey, but other skills may cost you due to losing the speed buff for a few seconds. Number 8. Take advantage of the unstuck feature. If you find yourself getting stuck and you can't get out, there's a feature in-game that will teleport you a short distance to the side to get you back on your way. You can find this button by hitting escape and then pressing unstuck, or just type /unstuck in the chat and this process will begin. Do be warned though, there is a cooldown timer on this feature, so you can't spam it. So if you get stuck again shortly after, you're gonna have to wait 120 seconds before you can use this feature again. Another very useful benefit of this is the ability to get back to the top of large structures if you fall off them. For example, if walking on a narrow pathway and fall down off the cliff, it'll take ages to make your way back up to the top where you were, but instead, stop moving right away and start the unstuck process. You should be teleported back up to where you fell off from. This is a feature I wish I knew about way sooner. But make sure not to move around a lot once you've fallen, or you will lose your opportunity. Number 9. Make sure to choose the right territory standing perks, because currently there's no way of resetting them. There's tons of great guides on YouTube about which to prioritize, but I'll just quickly go over which are the best and worst now. For starters, never pick XP gain. Once you hit level 60, XP has no use, so this perk will be a waste. The main one you want to look out for is standing gain, as it'll mean you'll level up faster for the future levels. When it comes to trade post tax and crafting fee reductions, try pick a zone that you'd like to do each of these in, preferably ones that you have your houses in, and then only use those perks for those areas. The house ownership perks will be given freely when you hit zone level milestones, and the housing tax reduction perks I recommend avoiding simply because the taxes are so low anyways. Also, the extra housing items is pretty useless unless you really like housing and feel like 200 items is not enough for your house. Gathering speed I also tend to avoid, but if you have some kind of master plan to make crazy money gathering in a certain zone, I could see some viable methods being made out of this perk. Sometimes you'll only be able to choose between unfavorable perks, but then just choose the one you think would benefit you the most. The added bank space in certain regions is also pretty nice to have if you're running out of space. Number 10. Resilient perk is crucial. If you plan on getting into PvP sooner or later, then try to make sure the gear you're buying or crafting has the resilient perk on it. Quite a few metas have come and gone, making certain perks no longer useful, but resilient is one of those perks that just seems to always be meta. That's because it makes critical hits do 4.9% less damage to you, and it stacks, so if you have it on every piece of your gear, when people crit on you, it's significantly less painful. So if you're on the trade post buying legendary armor for yourself, make sure this is one of the perks on it. Do note though, that it's only on your armor, and not for your weapons and jewelry. And then, sticking on the same theme, since you're building your gear around PvP, avoid any ward gear perks. because they are not useful at the same time as resilient, except in very niche situations. If you plan on playing both playstyles in the future, don't worry, you can just get 2 sets of gear, and with the new gear set feature currently in game, it's very easy to switch between your sets depending on which you feel like doing. But that covers 10 tips and tricks in New World. Hopefully you managed to get something out of them, no matter what experience level you are. Also, let me know some tips and tricks you think more people should know of, but aren't often explained. I'm very interested in knowing if you know of any more chat commands that do hidden features, like /played does. There must be some out there that very few people know of. Also, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps out massively. I'll be putting a part 2 together for this video very soon with some more tips and tricks. But until next time, have a good one. Thanks for watching another video. If you'd like to see more New World content, then click on any of the videos on screen now. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.